In this video, we'll explore the tension between the conscious mind and the culture of language and systems, or the system of culture, and the underlying or broader ecological system. So mathematics and geometry speak of the integrated whole, the one. The sphere is the ultimate symbol in geometry because it is both one and it is infinite. And when we look at medicine, it is the movement towards a position of greater ease. And when we look at illness or dis-ease, it's the movement towards extremism in one form or another, or imbalance. And so in the system of consciousness, the system of language, we're dealing with the reality of culture. And it can be illustrated by the tension between the ideal, the one, which is represented by the sphere, or in two dimensions, the circle. And so we are, all of us, in relationship with all of the dimensions around us, with our ecology. And in that way, we are in a dance with the circle, in a dance with the sphere. However, human consciousness being fabricated with language, we are viewing that relationship within a cultural system. And so, at any given point, we are in a state of ease or dis-ease on any given dimension, financially, socially, sexually, mentally, emotionally, in relationship to work, whatever we define in language, we are in a state of ease or dis-ease. It's a continuum with ultimate dis-ease on the one hand and ultimate ease on the other hand, the ideal. And ease is always in the center. It is, in Buddhist terms, the middle way. If you think of a car wheel spinning at 70 miles an hour, we might take it in for rebalancing to get a little bit more efficiency, because you want the wheel, the connection between the car and the wheel, to be at the center. That's the point of grace on the journey, is the place at the center of the sphere, at the center of the circle. Now, the challenge with grace, with ease, is it tends to facilitate unconsciousness. When everything's going well in all areas, the temperature is perfect, you're neither hungry or full, you're neither hot or cold, you're neither rich nor poor in a distressing way, everything's fine. You've got perfect balance and perfect grace, but you've also got unconsciousness, the kind of unconsciousness that is being part of the undifferentiated whole. It takes pain, it takes dis-ease to alert us to a tension, to a contrast between where we are and the underlying ecology, or between where we are and the grace or the ease that we desire. So we are in a continuum between on the dis-ease and imbalance on one side, moving towards the center to a point of grace. And you can imagine this as connecting a car tire or a bicycle tire. If you connected this point of the wheel and bolted that onto a bicycle, then you'd have a very lopsided journey. And it would be bumpier and bumpier the faster you were moving. And so as you moved the connection point of that wheel closer and closer to the center, the ride would become smoother and smoother until right at the center, there's the perfect point of grace. If you're riding on a symmetrical road with a symmetrical tire linked at the center, it's incredibly smooth. It's like riding on a well-maintained train. You can go very, very fast, but you don't experience, vibration. And in that state, it's easy to go to sleep, but it's also highly efficient. And if you drifted past that point and moved towards the other side in any polarity, in this case, we're dividing the wheel in half, in any polarity, you have two extremes. In this case, the right side of the tire and the left side of the tire. As you move towards the other extreme, it begins to get more and more violent, more and more bumpy. And so we have the ideal of grace, which tends to lead to sleep. And we have the ideal of consciousness, which tends to lead to the edge, meaning if you are unconscious, if you are in the center and you're unconscious, and this is the process of training an infant, you move out towards the extreme, and the extreme will wake you up. You will wake up. You will become aware in any extreme. If you put too much salt in your body, you'll start to experience severe pain. If you put too little salt in your body, you'll start to experience severe pain. And you have death, the disintegration of the system of psyche or body at any extreme. Put the body in 10,000 degree temperature and you have first pain and then dissolution of the system of the body. Put the body in 2,000 degrees below zero, and again, you have dissolution and destruction of the system. So the journey for human consciousness is the journey. If you are unconscious, one tends to move towards, unconsciously drift towards an extreme until you wake up. That's the initiation of pain, and then the initiation of fear of pain. And you become more and more aware. And as you return to the center, you have grace. And if you complete a revolution of starting unconsciously at the center and going out to an edge and then returning again, you have this phenomena of a return to grace while knowing it for the first time, because now you've got the counterpoint. You've got the memory of dis-ease, the memory of suffering that came before grace. And so you have a contrast point. So in order to know grace in language, in human consciousness, one must fall from grace or drift out of grace or move out of grace. One must then wake up and understand, in this case, the geometry and the mechanism of this relationship with the ecology. And then one must return to the center, to the state of grace, while holding the contrast point, the memory of a lack of grace, and thus know the grace and understand the grace for the first time. So this is the journey. Now, at any given point, we are in a particular location on a certain dimension. We might, if we picked the financial dimension, say that we're over here, meaning we're spending a lot of money, we're not making a lot of money, and so we're drifting towards an extreme, an unsustainable extreme that will eventually result in bankruptcy because we're spending a lot more than we're making. And at some point in that, we will become hyper aware of money. Maybe it's the point when our landlord evicts us because we don't have any money, or the point where a loved one dies because we cannot pay their medical bills. And in a capitalist framework where capital is valued more than human life, the doctors are working for money. The hospital is working for money, and unless you have the money to pay for the bill, I mean, there are some parts in the world where you can't even bring someone to the ER. You arrive at the ER in many private hospitals around the world, and their first look is, you may be unconscious and bleeding to death. They'll look for a credit card. If they cannot find, a $20,000 credit card and someone to call and get the cash, they will not operate, and you will die. And that's when you and the people around you realize, wow, this is a big deal. We've got to have more money coming in than is going out. And there's a hyper awareness of around money and around that dynamic. Now, if you become hyper aware and obsessed with money and start reading books about it and learning how to make more, and you make more, and you learn how to invest it and you invest more, then you come back to this point of grace where now you have as much money coming in as is going out. And if you still carry the memory of all that fear, you may do a journey on the opposite side where, out of sheer fear and scarcity, you create far more money than you need, and it's never enough. And eventually you feel the suffering of being bound by that imbalance. And you feel the pleasure of giving some of it away, of investing it in meaningful things in the future, and you come back to grace. So grace is in the center. Now, because we are dealing with consciousness and thus language, our journey to the center follows the paths of the cult, the paths of the cult beliefs, the paths of the cult paradigm, the paths of the system, right? So if we're dealing with US dollars in a US economy on this journey away from grace and hyper-awareness, and then the journey back to grace, we're doing it within a system where this is what a dollar looks like. Now, we could invent seashells or gold beads or whatever it is, but that's not the system, right? And so if we're over here and we want to get to grace, we can't make a beeline to grace. We can't go directly because the system is not an infinite system. It's a finite system. And all systems are broken. They're incomplete and thus inefficient. And so, the ideal system would just be we're here, grace is here, we just go right here. But roads help us understand this metaphor of the system because, if we realize, gee, we're lost, we're on the wrong track, we need to get here, right? we're over here, and our destination is here. This is the point of grace. Well, we don't just get in a jetpack. Why? Because we're not in the system of jetpacks. We're in the system of automobiles. And so our car is here, always on a road if it's a car, because if there is no road, the car cannot drive. And so we're at on Highway 278 here. So we've got to drive up this road. Now you see this road is taking us away from grace. We're not moving any closer. And if we continued on this road over here, we'd go all the way away from grace again, right? So what we have to do is go partly along this road, and then we have to look for a path within the system of culture. So then we have to turn left here, we come along here, but this isn't taking us to the center. So we come here, and then we take a right, and then this road goes almost through the center. So it's almost perfect grace. It's not, but it's close enough. And that's how this person has to get to grace. Now, what if we're over here? We're over here, and we want to get to grace. Well, we've got to drive up to here, drive all the way along this road. We're moving in a general direction, but it's not a beeline to grace. If there's a boat and we're close enough to the port and that system exists, then we could take a boat. But the boat may be going 20 miles an hour and the cars might be going 55 miles an hour. So it still may be more efficient in the cultural system to take this route over here. Now this is the closest route, but there isn't a connection to the overpass here, right? So we have to come back away from grace. Then we have to make the overpass connection right here. And then we drive over here. Then we turn to right, and there we are in grace. Now, this is the tension between instinct and intuition and the rational brain. Because when we are over here and we think of grace, we just want to be there instantly and then take a beeline. I want to go straight to grace. I had this idea. I want to go there. This is grace. That's where I want to go. However, within a system, within a cultural system, making a beeline for grace rarely works. Now, you can see the same thing in a dating phenomena, right? You look across the room. There's a warm, smiling, handsome guy, being courteous and lovely to his wife. You want that. You don't have it, you want it. You're over here with someone sulking and sending you nasty texts, but you want someone to be, warm and affectionate and courteous to you. But you're not. You're over here, far, far from grace. Well, the beeline would be, get out of the way, bitch. I'm having him. And come on, be nice to me. And treat me like you treat your wife, because I want exactly what you're doing to her. I want you to do that to me, right? So that's taking the direct path. But in a cultural system, this is honest, it's direct, but it doesn't work. Why? Well, there's all kinds of cultural norms that have been established as the pathway. So if you want that, you have to do a circuitous route. You've got to maybe go away from the party. You're at the party, you're looking at what you want, but you've got to leave the party. You're going away from grace. You've got to get on a dating site, which is a big fall from grace, Do this, type this. It's not at all what you want. You got to get up here. Then you've got to look at all these people. Again, fall from grace up here. Then you've got to meet people and then discover it's not what you wanted, and then meet people and discover it's not what you wanted, and meet people and discover it's not what you wanted. And then maybe you notice that you discover that, it's taken you, a year to go back and forth and do this and do that. And you discover the person you're interested has gotten a divorce. And so then you have to take other paths. Maybe there's a tunnel under here that, you go over here, and you start learning a little bit about them. You don't want to, you just want them to hug you and be polite to you like they were to that person. But you have to read this, and then you have to do that, and maybe you have to improve your vocabulary. They're a writer, and they like talking about these topics which you have no knowledge about. So now you have to go and study these topics, right? And then maybe you get recognized in that topic. That might take a year or whatever. And then you meet again and have a conversation. Now you're going back towards grace. You're moving closer to the person you like. And now you're having some of the conversations that are socially acceptable for compatibility. So you're moving towards grace, Then you have a nice click, and then you invite them on a date, and then you've come back to grace, right? So we're in a system that is highly inefficient. The same would be true for a man. I want to be adored and cared for and looked at as an attractive man by that woman. I want to have sex. I want to have this wonderful orgasm, and I want her to focus fully on me and just live happily ever after. That's what I want, and that's the woman to do it right there. But you're over here. And if you just call out, hey, attractive woman, could you look at me like this, and let's get into this position, have an orgasm. This is just what I want. Do that again. Finally, I'm back home. I've come home to grace. You may get a kick in the crotch, or a call to the police. Well, why are you stalking this woman, right? Because that's the system. The system is not designed to be efficient. It's incredibly circuitous. So you're going to have to get on this road. Maybe you're going to have to learn, who's this person friends with? What are they interested in? Oh, they're married. Okay, I've got to start. Now I've got to find a new grace, right? A new path to grace. So now I've got to go over here. Let's see. I'm going to drive over here. I'd like to make a stop here, but that's not where the path is taking me. I have to drive up here. Then I have to meet this person. Oh, they're single. So maybe I could. They don't like beards. We'll go back up to here. Back over to here, back over to here, back over to here. And then, I'm in grace. I've ended up in grace. I followed the system in all of its bizarre twists and turns. I've gotten lost as I've moved farther and farther from grace, only to return, on the main road back to grace. And so you have these dances in cultures where, for example, what you really want is the girl, but what the girl wants is a guy with 3 PhDs. But I want the girl. Yeah, but you're going to have to go away from the girl, way over here, way, way, way out into the, boondocks, and spend 4 years getting a PhD, then another 4 years getting a PhD, all that because I want, then another, 4 years getting a PhD. Well, now you're the guy at the lectern, and now the girl wants you because you followed the cult mapped path to desirability. whatever it is. It can be the most teeth hanging from your necklace, if that's what your tribe is about. It can be the biggest muscles, if that's what your tribe is about. It can be the one with the most money, if that's what the tribe is about. Every cult has its hierarchy of values. And way up at the top of the hierarchy of values, you have a lot of grace coming to you. But to get to the top, where you have those PhDs and you have the savings and you learn manners and you can, speak the language and you develop interest and you avoid, you have to avoid certain dead ends in the culture. Like this road just comes to the end and stops. And then you have to turn around, come back here, coming along here. Oh, dead end. You've got to explore within the system of culture, within the system that is invented by the majority of human beings, that defines the map. Now, you can take certain beelines, but only with people who are operating outside the system. Meaning, you might find another rule breaker, right? So they're there in your point of grace, and you're out here, and you might say, hey, how about it? I'll just swim across the water. Hey, how about it? And the answer is yes. And that's how it works. But sometimes it collapses, just like that map. You see, I broke a rule. I touched the mouse pad. And to get back to grace, I've got to go back, right? Because sometimes you break the rule and what's this? See, something different happened. This is something else. Sometimes when you break the rules, the unexpected happens. I thought we'd go back to the desktop because my pinky touched this part of the mouse before, and now all these interesting things are happening. So when you break the rules, when you break the rules that the cult has designed, whatever they are, you take here, then you go left, then you go here, and that's how it's supposed to work. When you break the rules, all bets are off. The unexpected happens because you go into the unknown. Because most of the time, the way cults function is they get you to adhere to the rules. Everyone drives on the right side of the road and does this, and that's just the way it is. Just do it. And when you see this little red sign, stop. Don't, just stop when you see that sign. I don't have time to explain it. Just do that, and then all will be well is the promise of the cult. But the problem with all systems is not only are they incomplete, but they tend to deteriorate. As technology evolves, the system that a given cult develops, like I'm curious, what happened to my... So that's the way back, right? That's the way back, and to figure out. See, and this is how, when you break the rules, you generate consciousness. You fall from grace. That's not what I was expecting to happen. But you learn how it works. When you're making mistakes, you're learning how the system works, which can allow you to A, make the system work for you, but B, it can help you discover there's a better system. There's another map, because the circle and your center point on it is innate. You will feel good always. All people will feel good as they're moving from asymmetry to symmetry, as they're moving from one extreme towards the center. everyone will feel good innately. The body feels better. I mean, it doesn't matter what culture you're from. If you're driving a bicycle tire that's balanced in the center, your body is not going to be jittering. If you're driving a watermelon bicycle, where it looks like that, every culture is going to feel bad. But every culture has a different way of remedying it. And what tends to happen is that cultures are good at remedying certain things. So this is a decent map. For example, this map of New York is a decent map if the remedy is three-dimensional movement towards the city center, let's say. It's a good system. But this map will not help you go from depression to exuberance. There's a manic, and then there's a depression, and then there's a contented exuberance, right? This map will not take you there. It'll take you to the city center, but it will not take you to centered well-being. That you have to find on a different map. The culture doesn't have a map for that. Now, they may say they have a map for it, just make money and keep busy, and then you'll get there. But what if you get busy and make money and you get worse and worse and worse and get close to suicide? But no matter what you say, hey, I'm feeling terrible, the cult just says, keep busy and make money. But you're actually toxic in busyness and toxic in obsession about money. And what you really need is a vacation, which is way over here, to help balance you out. But the cult isn't saying to go over there and balance it out. It doesn't have a map for where you need to go. And this is the crisis, the individual crisis within any system, is no cultural system fully understands the uniqueness of each person, number one, and two, where they're stuck and why. We have a don't ask, don't tell policy in most cases, where it's rude to point out what's going on. And so depending on what your dis-ease is, what your imbalance is, your culture may make it worse. Like if you're feeling miserable because you're working too much and you have too much money and you realize it's pointless. What's the point of more money, just to have more money, just to have more money? And someone says, well, I know, just be successful, i.e. make more money, and keep busy. Well, they may run you off the cliff, and that's called death, right? You get so out of balance that the system falls apart. And nobody saw it coming because the culture has a blind spot. Because most cultures are built on a one-directional value. The culture at some point in its history identifies one value, and freedom, let's say, or success, or popularity, or fame, whatever it is, it identifies a value. And then it says, do more and more of that. And as you start out with none of that, and you do a little bit more, your well-being increases, and you do a little bit more, and your well-being increases. But there's a certain point on any continuum where if you just keep doing more and more of that, more and more exercise, more and more money, more and more sex, more and more food, more and more salt, more and more temperature, heat, you'll end up becoming sick, which just means dis-ease, because you're getting too far into an extreme. And so the challenge is knowing when to use the road, which is never the fastest way. The cult has its roads. This is how it's done. It's just never the fastest way. When is the road so inefficient that it's worth making a new road? When it's worth stepping off the road, when it's worth stepping out of the car and going on foot, because sometimes you might have an inflatable kayak, for example, and you're right over here, And the system tells you, get on here, drive up here, go over here, go here, and then go here. And it just so happens there's 3 hours of traffic on that particular route that you are told to go on. But I have an inflatable dinghy, so I'm just going to row across, and even though I'm going at 3 miles an hour, it's only half a mile. And so I'll get there way faster than I will taking the normal route. Now, why would you learn all of that? You know, usually you do what you're told until you fall off a cliff, until something doesn't work. And that's when you wake up and you realize there's a whole field of possibility that is outside the map. You know, this map is here, that's good, but there's this whole thing outside of the map. And so I find this little diagram to be useful, and I hope it is useful to you. Hi, I'm Dane Rose. All knowledge begins with a paradigm, and out of that paradigm comes an idea, an awareness that we adopt, reject, or synthesize into something better. It doesn't become wisdom, it doesn't become useful until we take action, until we integrate it into not only our thoughts, but our feelings, our body, our words, and our way of being. For that to occur, we have to move from the passive media paradigm into more active engagement. In the link below, in the More Information section, is an invitation to join a very small, deliberately filtered, high-quality discussion with a group of people who share a common language and want to work with these ideas, with me and with one another, with the sole goal of creating 10 times more sustainable well-being for ourselves and those around us per unit of energy invested. Thank you for watching.